Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Hossfeld, and I'm the Western Range Segment Manager for Bayer. And I'd like to take a few minutes to discuss with you our new product that we have out called Rejuvra. So what I'll do is I'll get my presentation up here and going, and then we'll start down through it. So many of you may remember a product that we've had out in front of you and been using on invasive grasses such as Medusa head and Ventnata called Esplanade. Well, Rejuvra is the same thing as Esplanade, same active ingredient, but the difference is now we have our full grazing label and are able to sell it in range and pasture. So what I want to talk about is the economic advantages of using Rejuvra, and to talk about to just refresh our memories on how the herbicide works. So as we all know, invasive grasses are starting to take over our landscape in a major scale. And what they're doing is they're increasing the frequency fire by a significant amount, actually 4 times more likely for a fire than we were prior to their introduction. We all remember the pests on the range: cheatgrass, Japanese brome, bulbous bluegrass, but now we have new ones that have joined the team called Ventnata and Medusa head. And they're actually worse than the original ones because they have such a high silica content that makes them very unpalatable to the point of being unedible for livestock. So let's talk about the herbicide and how it works again. So Rejuvra is what they call a pre-emergence herbicide. And what it does is it binds very tightly to the organic matter in the top ½ inch to 1 inch of the soil. And what that does is that makes it very selective against annual plants that germinate near the soil surface. And as they try to germinate near the soil surface, as soon as that seed splits and that root radical comes out, the herbicide makes that root radical inert. Meanwhile, they're staying above the area where the perennial plants would live, where it's very safe and offers no negative impacts to the native forbs and grasses. So this slide does a great job of showing the long-term efficacy that we're getting out of Rejuvra. We're seeing up to 4 to 5 years worth of control, and that's very key in controlling that annual grass seed bank, because with any annual plant, they put down a huge amount of seed at the soil surface, and if we don't control them in just 1 year's time, they can bring themselves back to a full infestation. We found that cheatgrass seed is viable in the soil for about 4 to 4.5 years, so Rejuvra aligns very well with exhausting that soil seed bank. The water-soluble herbicides, they work great for maybe a year or two, but soon they're just diluted and washed through the system and no longer offer efficacy. So again, the new product is called Rejuvra. That's the product you'll be purchasing to control these new pests, and it has the full grazing label. You can find it in any retailer that you normally buy your crop and pest products from. So let's talk about application window. So right now we're in this pink zone, kind of this mid-season zone. So if you're going in very early in the season, before the seed that is just dropped has got a chance to germinate, you can just go with Rejuvra alone. But as we move into the time frame where we may have what we call that white layer, which is these roots below the ground, you really don't see the plant, you don't realize it's germinated, but it is, or we get to this spikelet stage where some are just coming through, then we need to add a tank mix partner, because Rejuvra has no foliar activity. It won't affect any live plant. It just makes that seed inert. So we need to give it some help to pick up what may be germinated, and then it'll do its job to pick up the rest of the seeds. And then if we're later in the season in a dormant situation like October or early November, then we can throw in some glyphosate, which will work better on the bigger invasive grass plants, but we won't worry about the injury on our perennial plants. Not only do we pick up those invasive plants that are really holding back our grass production, and we really want that grass production, it's key to us, but also it releases a myriad of plants of both forbs that are very beneficial to us for the forage ration, but also the pollinators really need these plants for their survival, and it really helps the wildlife side, from the birds to deer to all the rest of that. So it really improves the overall landscape when we use this product. And not only do we get this ecosystem elevation, but we start to create these really well-suited fire breaks, because with the invasive grasses gone, it's like fertilizing and irrigating your native range, so those plants stay greener longer and in a healthier state and resist fire. So along with invasive grasses and picking them up, we're finding that we do a really good job of picking up some broadleaf weeds as well, such as common mullein, some of the alyssums, spotted knapweed, diffuse knapweed, some thistles, because even though they may be a biennial, sooner or later they're going to have to come back from seed, and Rejuvra is going to do a good job of controlling that seed. So next thing I want to talk about is the impact from a grazing standpoint. So we can see on the left side, the non-treated side, if this were a whole pasture, we can see once the cheatgrass is mature and cured out, we've really limited to the amount of acres we can use now. Cattle will try and graze these areas, but soon they will tire from trying to sort through those abrasive annual grasses. They'll start to overutilize these areas and force us to pick up and move on, and really leaving a lot of acres unused and left behind. But on the right-hand side, you can see where we've got the treatment. You can imagine we're going to get much better distribution, much better utilization, and much higher livestock efficiency where they can use the whole range. So let's talk about the value of improved forage. For optimal efficiency, we know we do best when cattle can graze out on their own without a lot of assistance from us. 81% of the average beef animal's diet consists of grazed and cellulosic forage sources. That's huge when you think about the beef supply chain and the food supply chain, and it gives you a whole new view and a whole new appreciation for all these vast acres out in the West and what they can provide in the food chain. Cattle graze over 800 million acres that are inadequate for raising food for human consumption. 90% of the forage consumed by beef cattle is inedible by humans, and upcycling, carbon sequestration, and overall environmental benefits go up significantly when we control these invasive grasses. So let's talk about the benefits of improved forage. So when we remove those annual grasses, our native range not only is more nutritious and we have more of it, but it's also higher in moisture content. So as cattle are out grazing, they're going to do a better job of spreading out. They're going to stay out and graze longer, and they're actually gaining moisture as they're grazing, which takes pressure off your water supply resources and infrastructure and then the whole watershed. We get 2 to 3 times more forage because, as I talked, it's like irrigating these native ranges, which is going to be huge for us to graze longer, have less reliance on the hay pile, and give us lower expenses, which lend to the bottom line. And as I said, along with more grass, we pick up more of these shrubs and plants and forbs that are going to help give us a true ration on the range and raise our TDN. And cattle don't graze with tweezers, they graze by the mouthful. And so when we start to see this on the left side, we can see where it really starts to inhibit their ability to perform, whereas on the right side, they can graze freely and openly and do the best they can within that resource. So again, we talk about how much forage response we've seen. On average 2.5 to 3 times. We've seen up to 10 times. That becomes very meaningful, especially on years like this where we're in a drought cycle. That extra moisture can be key to getting grazed through to the end of the season and maximizing your opportunity. So the next thing we wanted to look at is, if we're going to invest with Rejuvra in our rangeland, how did that compare to other investments we can make? And so improved genetics is a very good investment and runs somewhat similar to improved rangeland. But again, it's not improving the whole asset. It's improving that portion of the ranch, and it's important, but it doesn't elevate the whole operation. Additional cross fencing and water improvement is a very good investment, but it's a long-term investment, and it takes a long time to get our money back. And we're still dealing with that degraded resource. Upgrading livestock equipment such as a windrower, that's a needed improvement, and it may be a very good investment up front or short term, but it provides something we very much need. But it still doesn't elevate the whole operational ability of your ranch. Whereas when we improve the rangeland, we make all of these tools better. So let's look at Rejuvra versus other options that we've had. So to just kind of quickly roll down through Rejuvra, it's a one-time application which reduces workload management, which is key nowadays in these heavy workloads we have. It's safe on existable forbs and grasses, and where you're getting so much extra forage, it's like getting extra land, and it would be tough to buy extra land for what Rejuvra costs. So let's kind of compare. Let's break it down and compare. So Rejuvra with 4 years of efficacy in one application. So if we take its cost divided by 4, that's going to put us right around $13 an acre. And if we use Plateau 4 years in a row to exhaust that seed bank to be truly successful, we're actually going to be more money than we would be with Rejuvra. And Plateau is going to have some fairly negative effects on native range forbs and grasses if it's used continually. So the next thing I want to quickly remind us is, now that we're going to get out there and really start to apply this product in a big way, remember how I mentioned this product binds very tightly and it stays very specifically to where it goes out. So it's very key that we put on a very even, consistent, and accurate application, because it's not mobile like other herbicides where it can creep around and kind of fill in the gaps. It won't do that, and we don't want to have escape. So we certainly want to work with our applicator to get a very even job. And please loop back to me if you need some assistance with that. So this last slide's got a lot of words on it. I'm not going to go into all of them. But essentially what I'm trying to say here is sustainability and preserving equity in the ag industry, and especially the livestock industry, is very, very difficult to do these days. And when you can invest in your core asset, the most important asset you have, the one that your whole purchase of the ranch revolves around, it really helps you preserve and build equity, be a good steward, and leave the ranch in a better place for future generations. So thank you. One thing I want to quickly mention, we're coming with a trial use program for Rejuvra, and we'll soon have it out to you. And what it is we're going to rebate you a certain dollar amount on your first case of Rejuvra, and that dollar amount can help you offset the cost of some pre-emergent or some post-emergent herbicide, or maybe offset some application costs, or just help you have a greater peace of mind as you implement this great new tool into your ranching operation. So thank you. I hope you have a good rest of your meeting. Well, I wish we could be there with you, but we hope to see you soon.